Hey, sports enthusiasts. Welcome back to another episode of Culture in Sports, where we believe culture is critical to long term success. We take the positive and the negative experiences from our guests with the intent to create a better sports culture for the future generations. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode here at the Culture in Sports podcast. I'm Wesley Livingston.
I'm Mike Scaramella.
And today we have a very special guest. It's a longtime friend of ours, a Fallbrook alum, graduated in 2008. Right now, he's currently serving in the Marine Corps, a 12-year veteran, I believe, Staff Sergeant. Saber Youman, how you doing?
What's up, everybody? Mike, Wes, how you guys doing
Good to see
today?
you, man. Well, dude, this is it's pretty cool to have you on. I mean, obviously you have a lot of leadership skills just being a part of the military, but we want to kind of go back to the beginning to where you kind of got started when you were younger, kind of looking towards mentors and things like that. When you were younger, who would you say was your biggest mentor right off the bat?
That would be my father, Al. Yeah, Mr. Senior Yeoman, for sure, big mentor, and alongside with my mom, Aisha. I was fortunate to have both parents, be raised in a two-parent household. I know a lot of others don't have that opportunity or in life, but I was fortunate to have both be present, so they were a huge impact in my life for sure.
That's awesome. Did they? I heard you play like a bunch of different sports. Like you try. I've heard you tried them all. So who kind of pushed you into all the different sports? Was that something that you wanted to do, or was that something that mom was like, "Hey, get into something else," or was your dad like, "Hey, football only"? What? How did it go for you?
Well, to be honest, I forgot one. Shame on me. My uncle lived with me at the time. That's my mom's brother on my mom's side of the family. My mom is from Morocco, so he played soccer in Morocco. Came out
Oh
to
wow.
the United States in the early '90s when I was born, and was here, lived with us for at least a decade. So he was a big influencer in my life, and he was a stud soccer player. And I watched him. He tried out for the Mexico team when he came here, and that was kind of his passion and his goal. So I got a lot of my first, I guess cleats on the ground with him with soccer. That was my gateway sport.
It's not a bad mentor to have.
You say it was your gateway sport. Was that your first sport like you fell in love with soccer, or was it something you kind of just fell into, or was doing it because kind of
for
following his
sure.
footsteps? Kind of.
Watching my uncle go out there and play and like outrun people, and like he used to show off, do the whole back kick thing, to score a
Get over
goal.
his head and
The cartwheel and stuff. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And so I wanted to do that, and then I guess I'm kind of a visual learner, so like seeing Tony Gwynn playing baseball and smashing balls and stuff like that, I wanted to play baseball, and then
Right.
seeing all these other things, all these other pro athletes like on ESPN and the highlights, I was like, that I want to do that really
I want to
badly.
do that. So for your uncle, super interesting to me. So when he came by and you played soccer after that, what was like the different mentalities between your brother and your uncle, and where playing out in Morocco versus the coaches and mentors that you had here playing soccer? Was it totally different or what?
Oh yeah, totally different. I mean, for one, my uncle, like, he started playing soccer at a very young age, and his passion was a lot different than mine. So like he saw it as a way out of Morocco.
Yeah.
As he grew older, you start realizing that there's a business side to sports. His passion was there and his skill was there, but his desire and drive was like he was hungry. Hungry. Kids over there at a young age learn, and like they learn the sport, and they do things differently because he was playing out in the streets. My uncle told me many times he didn't even have shoes. So a lot of you see it on commercials and other things. Like he lived it. Kids playing barefoot, running in the streets, stubbing their toes. Playing with balls that aren't even really soccer balls.
Yeah.
That was my uncle. So he had a different appreciation for the game than I did. I can just go down to the store, buy cleats, and go buy a soccer ball like in the blink of an eye if I wanted to. And
Right.
he had to work for every you know, second that he was on that field, you know. So a lot different. Totally. He like, I could tell by the way he's looking. He's like, oh, you're having fun, like cool, you know. Back in my day, blah blah blah. And it's just like, yeah, I know. I'm never gonna be as hard as you know.
Way of life. It kind of reminds me of like Dominican Republic in baseball.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a lot of those guys. I mean, you know, they're trained from an early age. Say like, this is a way out. Like, you know, you get good at this, there's a chance you go and do what you want to do. And same kind of thing, you know, a lot of those guys no cleats and then come here and then sign contracts and do big things, and it's just a cool development to watch.
Yep. Oh yeah.
It's definitely a shift change,
Yeah.
cultural change. So I obviously know you played a little bit of football in high school. What got you started in football? And then my second question, what got you started to play quarterback? That's what I'm thinking. That's what I really want to know. Playing quarterback in Fallbrook. I want to know how that came about.
So I'm a Fallbrookian at heart. I was born in the Fallbrook Hospital. A lot of people don't know that. But what got me started in football was Michael Vick. Football was one of the last sports that I kind of like got around to playing. Like I played, you know, baseball, t-ball, soccer, indoor soccer. I ran, you know, I did all those other things, but football was kind of the one that I was just like, man, I never put the pads on, I never put the helmet on. I did in play, but I never took the step forward to go play because my mom was kind of like, hey, people get hurt really bad playing this sports, you know.
Yeah.
But I remember I don't know who they were playing, but I remember watching Michael Vick, and he was playing for Virginia Tech at the time. He's running down the sideline, and he's got like two dudes to beat. And he jumps into the air. He's like at the 3-yard line and gets flipped into the end zone and like almost lands on his feet kind of. And like, man,
I think that was in like every magazine.
Yeah.
For a while. I remember seeing that.
And I watched that on football, the highlights, because I would watch football, you know, and I'd watch also NFL Yearbook that they had on ESPN. And the music, the hype, like the backstory. But watching Michael Vick do that, sacrifice his body and jump and flip, because I was also doing gymnastics, I was like, bro, set. I'm there. Yeah. And I convinced my mom. I was like, Mom, I want to play. And she knew how I was. And anytime I was like, hey, I want to do something, she knew I would obsess over it. And so she's like, oh, not my baby, please, please. So then that next spring, there I was, signing up at the Avocado Festival to play football. And I remember weighing in, and they're sizing me up for my stuff, and I was like, "Oh yeah, here we go!"
Excited to get all the gear, dude. Like,
excited to get all the gear. I'm like, I'm gonna be the next Mike Vick. I don't care what it takes. And that
wore
never
those pads
happened.
to sleep that night.
No sleep. But I woke up and I hit reality, man. I was probably one of the bigger kids on the field, so I started off playing center. So instead of throwing the rock, I was handing it off to the quarterback.
Center?
Yes.
How big were you was this a freshman year, right? Or when did you start?
No, this is Pop Warner. This is when I was like 10.
Okay, and, so you were younger, but you were big. You were big.
Yeah, a little bigger. And then I stopped growing. It was weird. Like in junior high, I stopped growing. It was weird. And I didn't start growing until my junior year in high school. But so I played center and middle linebacker, and then I was also a guard, and then I was a kicker because of my soccer skills. And it wasn't until I think my third season, I take that back. My second season where I was like, hey man, like let me try out for quarterback. I could throw the rock a little bit, and then I kind of went from there and then grew.
And did your coach know that you were a senior before, or a center before that? Was he like, you're a center? Like, I'm not sure if I want to give you the rock.
Yeah, he knew.
Was he pretty light? Was he like, okay, go ahead?
He knew, and I think that was one of the things, because I told him, I was like, yeah, I would like, what position do you want to play? I was like, I'd like to play quarterback. And they're like, well, we're going to let you learn the game first. And I was like, cool. I was a little kid, so I was like, oh, I'm playing football, whatever. Yeah. So, I played center, no quarterback, and I was a better linebacker than I was a center. So defense was my thing. Yeah. And then I played both ways, pretty much all Pop Warner. Yep.
And would you say you said your mom's always kind of worried about you getting hurt on the sidelines? Was your dad the same kind of way, or was he more like, hey, you better hit that guy or that kind of thing? Because sometimes you get both tails of the take. You know, you get kind of both sides, and then it's just like it's kind of interesting to see how it kind of plays out with the person at hand. You know.
So here's the funny thing. When I hit the field, man, you couldn't keep my mom quiet, man. Like when I was tackling dudes, getting safeties, running, stripping the ball, running touchdowns back, or doing whatever, and like being with my team, which is what I love. My mom would do her little Moroccan la, 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 anytime we scored, and my dad was quiet, just super quiet. He's always that way, super quiet. But he didn't show it or tell me, hey son, don't get hurt. But he was always like in the back of my mind, he's like, focus on your education. Like that's the most important thing to do. So I'm just like, cool.
Yep.
So he was like a fan, but he wasn't like the dad who was like consistently talking about the sport or, I knew he supported me because he obviously drove me to practice and was asked me how my day went. And then he also got involved. He was like the equipment manager. So he was like
nice.
low key. Yeah, he was like low key, supportive, but not like
always involved somehow.
Yeah, always involved somehow, like in the background, and
that's cool.
And that's kind of where I learned, indirectly teamwork as well. Like, you don't have to be the shining star. You don't have to be all that. You can support in other ways, and it was interesting to have that dynamic. In my mom's shift from, oh no, not my baby, to hey, get it done. Because she's Moroccan too, so she's like, yeah, hey, get it done. Like
at the end of the day, no excuses. Playing quarterback at the end of it, playing quarterback, did you feel like a different sense of like responsibility to the team from your different positions? Did you feel like a heightened leadership role? Did you what differences did you feel when you did step into the quarterback, that leadership role?
Man, it was cool being a middle linebacker and playing offensive, and then being the quarterback as well. I guess it kind of naturally happens. Like you, as the quarterback, you kind of like command. Everybody's like looking at you, and that's honestly one of my favorite things. Like looking back at it, even now, you hang up your helmet or you hang up your shield, if you will. Looking up at the dudes in the huddle, and they're like, "What now?" And
next?
And like they feed off of you. So yeah, you do feel that leadership on your back a lot of the times, and like you feel the weight of your teammates. Like if you let them down, it's on you. And with with leadership comes great responsibility. And it's the same thing. It's crazy that those fundamentals have. I mean, and I would say quadrupled in the job that I do now, because we work in a very small team, and it's literally, it's the same, it's the same dynamic, it's the same sense of responsibility and sense of ownership that you have to feel.
Was
now,
being a
like,
quarterback,
I
was going to say, was being a quarterback, was that your first real sense of that? Or did you have anything before that, or was that like the very first time where you're like, yeah, this is a team effort, it's on me. I'm the leader here. Got to bring the team together.
I felt like that in soccer, but in soccer, like I was so young, it wasn't as serious. Because when you start growing into a sport, you start taking it more serious. Kind of like referring back to my uncle, like there was a point in his life where he enjoyed and he played, and then you start maturing, and you're like, all right, what does the future start looking like? So I guess. Sorry, what was the question again? I don't want to go around it.
That's right. No, I think like more of the main point of it was actually to see if that was like the biggest or the most responsibility you felt as like a team leader.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So yes, in that, and where I was as like a teenager with all that build up, and like you start to understand the game better, and you start looking towards the future, and you're knee deep in the season. Like, yeah, that was it. Like, I always look forward to football because it like changes your whole life. Like, it's a lot of work doing the 2 days in the summer. It's a lot of work doing, not going on weekends, you're pretty much dedicating your life to it. So like when you have more responsibility, you make, well, in my position, you feel yourself making more sacrifices, if you will. Like, you're not going to go out. You're going to spend more time studying the playbook because the team relies on you. And I started feeling that, I guess, freshman year, sophomore year. I wasn't even really getting a lot of playing time at that time, but I felt like the sense of, hey, my guys need me. And the beautiful thing about that was like most of those guys I played Pop Warner with, I grew up with. So we all know, hey, come summer, fall time, it's time to whip it on. That cohesion starts forming, and it's like nonverbal. All right, let's start training. Like before you know it, you're at the park on Saturday throwing the ball around, running routes, and the season hasn't even begun because you guys are all on the same level, you have that same desire, And there's guys who, and that all depends on, dynamics. Like I had two parents, other people have other stuff going on, life's tough. You drag guys along, you're like, hey, come on, bro. Some guys don't even take it serious, as serious as you do, and that's okay, because everybody has their own walk in life. But you still have that cohesion, that one commonality is you're playing football. You're playing, like, and Fallbrook at the time was like, they used to like shut down still, like, some businesses to watch us play. So it was kind of like a big deal. And you still have, you have the whole town behind you. You have your buddies behind you, and you start. Yeah, it's a great feeling, for sure. And it's definitely like, I guess above yourself, in a way. You start feeling that camaraderie and that responsibility for your teammates.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's transition into after you graduate high school. You go directly into the military after graduation?
So I tried to play a season. I guess it was a gray shirt at Palomar Junior College.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
I tried to play football there, and there's some good players there, man.
Yeah, I remember.
But they recruit for junior college, and they take it very serious. And
I had a lot of buddies that played at Palomar. A lot of guys that couldn't make grades or got dropped from their D1 schools usually went to Palomar. Mm-hmm. And then I feel like the rule was back then you can go to Palomar, play 2 years, and then get drafted. Or you could go and you have to finish out. You have to finish out your season for NCAA. I'm not sure, or finish out your 4 years, I believe, or something like that before you could sign. I can't remember.
Sure how it was back then.
Yeah, and a lot of guys would also, go to a D1 or D2 school, mess up, and then they'd go to Palomar, and then they'd get a chance at another D1 school, and like get a second shot. So there was some studs, man. I mean, Southern California does take their football junior college serious, and it was kind of an eye opener for me, thinking that it was lower, because going from high school, I'd be like, oh, I'll just go play junior college and try to start and whatever. But there's some good solid studs there, man. And they
just as big, they hit just as hard,
just as big, and
just
as talented, and a huge talent pool. And even our competition was kind of like the same way. I guess California is unique in that way because other states, like, they don't even mess around too much with junior college football at all, or JC football. So it was.
Well, people take it for less than it is, for sure.
Yeah,
it's like,
for
and
sure.
then they come out here like, holy crap, these guys are bigger than some of our D1 guys, faster, and it's pretty crazy. Like a lot of those guys, I especially know for Palomar, had a lot of guys that
just couldn't have the grades, made a mistake, and then had to come down for a little bit, which is unfortunate, but it doesn't mean the talent wasn't there for sure.
Well, it's a smart thing to do. I mean,
it is.
Smart thing to do. You go down, make sure you make grades, get back up, and then show them that you could do it, and then you go back to another school that you want, or you get drafted out of there if you want to. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and a lot of that was actually if you break down, and this is the conversation that I had with myself too, and why looking back I was grateful for the upbringing that I had. A lot of those guys, were there for grades and some other mishaps, and a lot of that, because we had mentioned it earlier, mentorship, was due to either them not listening or the lack thereof. And it's sad to see because most of the guys, I played football, I played D1 high school and other things like that, and I competed. But there's guys that are very skilled, very, very skilled. And it's sad to see and hear that they didn't go anywhere due to lack of mentorship or just a toxic culture in their program. So you hear about those schools, like across the country or even here in Southern California, who kind of have like a bad reputation of that. And it's sad to see their good athletes suffer, and not get the opportunities that they want. And that's what makes the culture and the dynamics so important. Because going back to Fallbrook, and like I guess timing is everything. Having the timing and like I guess esprit. We call it esprit de corps. Sorry, I don't mean to use military terms, but like the momentum of the backing of the town, like the town has your back, your buddies have your back. Like that was the feel of Fallbrook, and it made the culture within our sport, being football, good. Like you were proud to be a player, like you were proud to wear your jersey on Friday. To let everybody know, it's game day.
Around in the big
this is number 9. Like I'm number 9. Steve McNair Jr. here, trying to represent for the, for the town, and it was more than just about you. It's just like, and our record wasn't even that great. Like my junior year, I think we were like 0-10. It was terrible, but we went out there.
0-11. Who's counting?
Yeah, and the guys, 11. We didn't count preseason. All right, buddy.
Yeah. Shut up, Wesley.
Hey, Victor's tell the story. So, 0-11 it was. But we still wore our jerseys proud. And we still, like, even though we were like, oh, this is trash, blah, blah, blah. I still remember being like, hey, dude, we're Fallbrookians. Like, we'll get them next time. And that's kind of like, you win some, you lose some. You have to draw the line of, like, being proud to be a loser, but, like, still having pride because you know that you're going out there and you're playing hard and you're there with your brothers suffering together every day. So it is what it is,
And that camaraderie is so key. Is so key. And like, do you still keep in contact with some of the guys you played with, whatever sport it was back then?
I do, and it's crazy. Like,
you don't have a lot of social media, but
I don't. No,
lifelong friends, regardless of.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like I'll pop into town every now and then, and what was that? Man. Almost 12 years ago, and people still like, "Hey, what's up, quarterback?" I'm like, "That's how you remember."
Hey, honestly, you're probably not too pissed off about it. You're probably like, "Yeah, that's
right." No, but I wasn't even that good, But people were like, "Oh, do you remember that one pass? Remember that one pass you threw?" I'm like, "You remember that? Like what?" Okay, I'll take it. Like I'm nobody, I'm nobody, but people are like, "Hey, what's up, what's up, QB?" I'm like, "Hey, what up, man?" Like,
hey, I'll take it.
That was a decade ago, man. Yeah, but it's cool. I guess that's another perk of living in a small town. But yeah, so see, going back to those college players, man, it's just like, and you see the same thing in the pros. Like those guys who lose their way, due to their mentorship, and I think the thing that's important. Going back to like remembering where you come from, it's like remembering who you are as an individual, as you grow as a leader into a sport or just as a player or as a teammate, as a father, as you grow older, it's important to remember who you are and where you came from. And that's a double-edged sword. Some guys have a very bad upbringing, so they're like, I need to get the heck out of here. But at the same time, they're remembering where they came from. And that's their driving force. And on the other part, it's like, hey, I remember where I came from. I'm so grateful. Thank you. Like it could go either way.
And honestly, even like you said, even the people that have the bad upbringings, a lot of times they learn a lot from those experiences. I mean, it kind of makes you grow a little bit more and keeps you out of it in the future sometimes. So I mean, if you're learning from it, I mean, it could be a decent thing, even though it was a rough time in somebody's past.
It's wild for me to think because I feel like some of the most and more troubled kids growing up are some of the best citizens today. As adults because they've been through so much. Whether they're in and out of juvie or
striving
they're
not
kicked
to
out of their
get
home
back there,
or whatever it is. Some of those people are some of the most strong and hardened people because they've been through a lot in their past, and so that's why I think it's especially it's still okay to look back if you had a hard past because that still made you who you are also. So I think it is a double-edged sword. It goes both ways. So
and I believe that the sports teach you that resilience as well. Okay, because people forget, and this is why I believe. Sports are very important. No matter if you're playing football, soccer, it's the foundation of taking your losses and rolling with it, because not every play is a success. Not every every game is a victory, and it teaches you, and especially if you have the opportunity to start sports young, the culture of it teaches you how to balance that, how to balance your L's with your W's, and it also helps you with that resilience because of that. It's like there's so many. I could go on for days about the positives of sports and like the culture, the good culture it breeds, because accountability, something that I believe in this day and age we're lacking as a society, in my opinion, is accountability. Sports, I mean, there's no more writing on the wall than how you perform. Your teammates will let you know, and your coaches will let you know. You don't bring what you got to the table. Guess what, buddy? You're not gonna play. And there's always politics involved or whatever. There's always exceptions to the rule. However, like your work and your performance dictates what the results, right? Whether you're gonna play, for one, and whether you're gonna win. So you just have to learn from your mistakes, and then like learn from each play, even when you don't make mistakes. Oh, how can I be better? The true guys who are self-aware, they know, and then like your buddies know. Like I remember being on the field and being in that role as a QB and like not having to say much. It's awesome when you get to that point. When I look at my receiver and he's thinking the same thing that I am, like, hey, bro, and I don't even have to signal him. Hey, we're running our own audible in our heads, and I'm like, hey, bro, all right, you're gonna run that post. You see the cover 2? Cool. Change that play real quick. Set height, go. Yep. Repetitions, that resilience of like failure. Hey, we've been here before, right? Let's try not to do it again. In my team, I had a team chief. We switch teams every now and then, but I have a team chief, master sergeant. He was a really good, decent leader, and he always said something. He's just like, hey, if you're gonna make a mistake, that's fine. You're human, but try not to make the same mistake. Try not to make the same mistake more than twice, because then you start questioning, my, faith in you as an individual to think, and and self-evaluate. That's a good point, because essentially that's what sports is. Hey, the guy broke left last time. He shrugged his shoulders this way. What is he going to do? And that's a chess game. But it's that resilience. It's getting hit in the mouth, getting back up. Everything's okay. Continue on to the next play. And then do the same thing. Do the same thing.
And learning how to take a loss. I mean, a lot of people, they don't get that experience. If you're not into sports, like, a lot of times parents are like, oh, no, you're all winners. Yeah, that's cool. But at the same time, it doesn't happen in life. You're not always a winner.
Everyone gets a trophy.
I feel like that could be a real issue because, I mean, if you don't understand how to cope with losing, you're not going to win every time throughout your life. There's going to be sales that you lose. There's going to be clients that you lose. There's things that happen. But, if you don't know how to deal with it, I feel like you're in a lot of trouble. In sports, you have to deal with it. Like, you do. Yeah. And that's
injuries, coach changes, mishaps off the field, all types of things. You have to adjust.
Absolutely.
Stick with the ball and keep it pushing.
Yep. So I believe, due to all what we're talking about, the resilience, taking the losses, and then going home to face your family, especially after a poor performance. I remember me throwing interceptions. I was just like, oh my gosh. I mean, there's nothing more, like, you throw it right to the defender. What can you say? Nothing. You got to be like, well, yep, I did that. Totally read that one wrong. Hopefully, boys, I'll make it up next time. And then, like, you got to go home, face your family, face your friends.
Yeah, that's rough.
That's the hard
and
part.
You're just
for
like,
me.
that's it. That's it.
And
that's a game, though, and it's good to, like, I was pouty a couple times, and, we're all human, but what does that mean? Like, I cared, for one, and, like, some of the guys who throw fits are just like, hey, dude, I wouldn't have gone about it that way, but at least he cares, at least he's passionate about something. With the right mentorship and, like, more reps of losing, he'll learn to cope with it. He'll learn to develop, the skills to be like, you know what, I've been in this situation before. I handled it poorly last time. I'll try to handle it a little better, you know.
And also, you want people to feel like a win is a win, too.
Yeah.
Because at the same time, if everybody's winning all the time, it's like it doesn't really feel like a win if you don't really win. So that's why if you have your losses and your wins, it's like, okay, well, you can see what a loss feels like. You can see what a win feels like. It's not all the same. Like you want to have that good experience, so it drives you to do better things in the future. Otherwise, you're just going to be stagnant and not move. I think
I do like that idea.
Dude.
So you can kind of take your losses and kind of say, hey, look, what can I do different over here? And even
Yep.
on your winning side, like what can I improve on this side, on my winning side as well?
Because even in a win, there's mistakes made. There's always mistakes made in the win. How many plays have been blown on games that you've won?
Yeah, exactly.
There's losses in a game that you win.
Yep.
So I mean,
and every play.
Every
This analogy I use it, and I've used it before, and before my memory fades away from myself, I will continue to use it. As a QB, you have a different perspective a little bit, I would say, because I've played a lot of the positions, receiver, lineman, quarterback, so I kind of know the field a little bit. But when you're a quarterback, you get to see a little bit more. You're more aware. You're reading the defense. You're calling the shots. And I remember distinctively all the time people taking the L's as we're winning. I remember one of my left tackles in high school was a small dude. Like, we did not have big linemen when I was playing. And these guys had heart as lions, man. I'm telling you. For them to look back at me, sometimes when I would get sacked or I would have to get out of the pocket and extend the play or do whatever, the look on their faces, like some of my buddies were so close, and we wouldn't even hang out out of school or after practice, whatever. But as a unit, we were close, But these guys tried so hard, man. Heart of lions. And I felt like so undeserving. They would grit their teeth, plant their cleats into the ground, do whatever they could. And just to hold the line long enough for me to get the ball away. And I knew I had to get the ball off quickly. No offense to them. And like I said, these guys were champions in my mind. But I remember a couple plays, I had one of the fastest receivers in the league at the time, Marquis Sumter, as my receiver. I remember throwing him a fade route, but before I did, and watching in the corner of my eye, because I have pretty wide peripherals, my left tackle getting destroyed. I'm talking I heard him go, and I'm pretty sure his feet were in the air like this. But I got the ball off in time, and we scored on that play. But he got up, was totally destroyed, and he was defeated. And did he lose that one-on-one, altercation with the defensive lineman? Absolutely. But there's 11 players on the field, man. So, some people are taking losses while others are taking wins. The crowd was cheering for Marquise as he caught the fade route, nice and perfect down the sideline, but no one was booing my left tackle for getting destroyed at the same time. Right. And he got up disgruntled, but he was uplifted the fact that we got the ball off and I scored, and he said, "What can I do better
his job
next
is
time?"
done.
His job was done. He did what he had to do, and he still was humble enough to self-evaluate and say, "I got destroyed on that play." And I say, "Hey, say no more, bro. I know, but thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service." Yeah. And that's how it is. And I tell people sports are important because, where do you learn that lesson when you're not playing sports? So, if you're in a high school situation and you're in middle school and you're in a high schooler and you're not playing sports, you're not playing a sport like football where you're literally sacrificing your body for the player next to you almost every single play. Where do you learn that? Where else?
I feel like you don't until you get
reading a book,
situation.
Watching a movie, it doesn't get more real than that, guys. And that's why I try to explain to people. I'm like, even if he grows up to be, make poor decisions in his life, or he goes down a bad path, that left tackle that I'm referring to, in that moment, he was a team player. In that moment, he was willing to give everything for me, a guy who was not even his blood, and that's what people miss, I believe, when when they don't do it, or they're going about sports the wrong way, or they're not really into it, or they don't do sports at all. And I think that is huge lesson to take, with you. And regardless of whether that left tackle is a businessman or he's a druggie or whatever, in that moment, whether he takes those lessons or not, he was still in that situation to grow, to understand, resilience, to understand teamwork, to understand sacrifice, and he's a good dude. And I know that those moments have shaped him to be the man that he is today, the father that he is today. And to me, there's no more better lesson than that, and it's cool. And like we're not getting we're not getting paid to do that. Athletes get paid and they learn those lessons every day while they're getting paid. That is beautiful. But to not do that, and still be willing to sacrifice that much, if not more, at the time, it's interesting.
Looking back, do you think that understanding of how important team is and how important that sacrifice is, do you think that had a huge influence on you joining the military?
Yeah, and it definitely has, man. Yes, it definitely has. And in the early years, I have to admit, in the early years of my life, in the early years of my career in the military, it wasn't like that. It is like that now because of where I am in my career, and even though there's guys in my career now, the field that I'm in, who don't, like, you can tell that they didn't have that because they're kind of missing that. Like, we're teammates, and you can play just like in sports. You know who your good teammates are, and you know who the guys who are just like me are.
The guys you throw into right field back in
what I'm saying? You're just like, okay, cool. But there's guys, and it's funny to me because I refer to sports so much in my life. I'm like, hey, did you play ball? Sometimes I don't have to ask. I'm like, he didn't play ball. He didn't play ball. You can tell because
it's funny. Most times
he's like, yeah, I play tennis, and you're just like, nothing against tennis players, but it's just like, okay, individual sport, or no, I didn't play sports at all. Usually is the answer, and you're just like, yeah, you're kind of not coordinated, and you're not that great of a teammate, man. Like,
you just don't. It doesn't click on you. It's like it takes. It's like allocating different duties to people. Like this is what we need you to do in order for this team thing to work. It's like that's so big. And like football and in the military, you rely on somebody else to do something to keep you safe or to keep make this machine work the right way. So I think that correlation between us is so close and so prevalent. Like
correct. But to be fair, and like I said before, there's always an exception to the rule. There has been phenomenal teammates who never played sports because of their upbringing, because of the culture that they grew up in, and because of who their parents were, or their life, their situation in life, and like maybe they were treated poorly, and they don't want to be treated like that. They want others to be treated good because they were treated poor, so they help out more. And so, it's super unfair to me to be like, oh, he played sports and so he's great. No, there's dudes who didn't, or who played sports and who aren't good teammates either, like we said before. So. I just wanted to clarify that, but like you said, that tends to guide me and be like,
Well, it makes sense. I mean, it's a good guide for anybody. I mean, just like same thing, and like you said with the work thing. So like if they've never been in a team atmosphere, everything in my I'm in sales. Everything is a team effort. If I have to send my things over here, they do something. It passes over this way, and then it comes back to me. And it's all something like and everybody that we work with, my boss only hires. Well, I wouldn't say he only hires, but everybody that he has hired has been on some kind of team.
Yeah.
And or has that kind of or has that mentality. There's a couple people that weren't on teams, but they had that mentality where it was like, they knew how to be involved on a team, and it was something that they didn't learn until after they were done with high school and they didn't play any sports, but they had to learn it, in their business, which took them a lot longer. Something that we might have had a little earlier because we've been guided by sports.
Yep, and that mentorship, just being around mentors, whether it be a coach, because if you're surrounded by that consistently. You're kind of being guided, not necessarily told what to do. If you have a good coach, he'll let you, he'll let you try to perform the way that you're supposed to perform. He'll let you grow the way you're supposed to grow, but he'll be like, hey, you might want to look out. And, like my coach, I'm just going to refer to him as CS. Those are his initials. One of the best men, not just coaches, best man that I know. he is still a part of my life. And he, in the beginning, I mocked him a little bit with all the other players because he brought in a new feel like junior, senior year. We went 0-11 with him, and then our senior year, he's like, hey, we got to revamp. We got to look within ourselves as human beings. Forget the program, forget the program. His motto was character counts. And boy, let me tell you, the decisions that he made for us to be good young men and the sacrifices he took and the nastiness that came from some of the parents. And he didn't give in because he knew it was important because he lived that life. He was a stud. He was a corner and a safety for UCLA. He played in the Rose Bowl. This guy played for the LA Rams back in the day. Like he's as OG as it gets. Much respect to him, and he's been there, done that. And he knows in the end, when you are hanging up your shield and you are hanging up that helmet, what is important. The life that you led as the culture that should have shaped you to be a better man, because at the end of the day, or a better woman, or a better mother, better father, because at the end of the day, that's what counts. And if your sport and your culture and your mentors don't teach you that, then there's something missing, And I can use the same analogy to the military, I've had guys that they go and they serve their country honorably, man, and they give the total sacrifices, because it takes a lot out of you, to go to foreign countries to put yourself in those situations, certain situations, and then try to come back home and try to work your way back into society. There are those who cannot make that transition. And to me, there's no worse. It's like a failure to not only yourself, but for maybe, some people blame the institution, but it's like, if you can't return as a citizen with your honor and dignity and cope with society, the thing that you sacrificed for, and the time that you gave away for yourself, then it wasn't worth it. It's not, something happened, that didn't go well. And to me, that's a failure. And I think the coach saw that in sports and why, how a culture can be toxic. But he said character counts. That's what matters. Yes, we'll produce good athletes. We'll produce winning, hopefully a winning season. But at the end of the day, I can rest easy knowing that the players that step on the field are held accountable. They are men. They do the right thing when no one's looking, and that is huge mentorship. I mean, it touched me. It worked on me. It tried to make me a better person. Like I said, I mocked it at first. Whatever, dude. Blah blah blah. We just want to, lay people out. I just want to, throw some touchdowns, baby. Blah blah blah. And we grew together, and it was growing pains, but. Yeah. Much respect to him, because regardless, no one could take that away from him, that he made his players better and that he took the time to do that. And I'm talking about, we had talks late. He went the extra mile. And, mentorship, it doesn't end. Like I said, I still call him, ask him for advice. And this is 10, 12 years later, And,
that's awesome. So you're still in touch with him right now?
Oh, still in touch with him. I have him on my phone. We talked to him last week. Hopefully we get to meet up soon. Yeah, hopefully we get to meet up soon, cool. And even throughout the progressions of my military career, and because there's certain graduations that are involved, there's certain ceremonies that are involved to celebrate, what you accomplish. He was there. I invited him every time, and he didn't make them all, but it's like, man, not everybody has that either. Not everybody has that either, and some people don't step outside of themselves to realize what they do have. As in, like, a good coach and a good mentor, some people get in their own way. That's just a human factor.
And it's just hard to ask for the mentorship. Hard to ask for help if it's not like a coach that's yours. Yeah. It's hard to go up to somebody and say, "Hey, look, I need some help. Can you help me out?" So
because we know a lot growing up. A lot of your mentorship came from your family. Your mom, your dad, your uncle, stuff like that. As far as your professional career, have you? We talked about this in our previous episode of seeking out mentors, or do you have any mentors that you've met along your professional career that you kind of seek their advice in certain situations, or because
absolutely, and I still refer back to the old ones, because I'll tell you, it's like in my professional career, I'm not going to sit here and say it's the same as football because it's not. But it presents, or like any other the sports that I played, but it presents some of the same issues. You know, what do I do? Like how much harder do I have to work in order to accomplish a task? How many repetitions does it take to be good at something? You know, like who's going to hold me accountable? My teammates. Like you run into the same issues, a lot of the same fundamental issues. I call them fundamental issues because it's the fundamentals of sports. It's the fundamentals of teamwork. It's the fundamentals of all that. And it just, you're putting on, instead of putting on my football pads, I'm putting on a plate carrier now with with a Kevlar on. So it's just like, and I'm using kind of the same lessons that I learned, hey, how to fill gaps when I'm injured, being the water boy. Now it's like, hey, when I'm down, how do I help my team out still? Do I take the late shift? That discipline, that resilience, like it sticks with you. So some of the issues that I do have in my professional career, I look back to what, where I came from and like the situations that I had in my life, in sports. And then I also use the same mentors, my father, my uncle, my coach, for those situations in the military. And it's crazy, it's two different things, but it's almost like the same, hey, what would you do in this situation? And my dad, he was in the Navy for 24 years, and I hardly talk about his time in. When he gives me advice, it's manly advice, not really service advice. It's, what would you do? My coach, I'm like, hey, coach, what would you do in this situation? Or, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm asking a coach, and he doesn't realize the amount that he's helping me do military stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, hey, we're saving lives over here. Like, I tell him later, I'm like, hey, bro, thanks to you for your help and your guidance, And he's the kind of guy who's just like, oh, if I'm in a training jam or something, I'm like, if I'm ever on the East Coast, he's like, oh, I'll fly you up. We can take care of it now. And he's flown me on several occasions because he has that opportunity to do so, and we'll have a discussion or help me out. And I'll be like, dude, he'd be like, say less, I got you. And I'm like, holy cow, man, having that. And
that
then
is awesome.
That backstop, not everybody has that, and that relationship took a long time to develop, but it developed with the reps of him being a coach and a mentor, and the reps of me receiving, and then me feeding back, and he's told me on multiple occasions, players teach you more about yourself than you do, as well. So hearing him, coming from the coaching perspective, in the mentorship realm, saying how much we affect his life. So I guess it's a two-way street. And I can't say I guess, because me being in the military and now being in for 12 years, I am that higher ranking guy. I am that mentor to the younger Marines coming in and the younger service members. Even when I meet, in different countries, and there's like young privates and stuff who are just like, I don't know what to do. It's like, don't worry, bro. We'll show you. I got you. I remember when I was in your shoes. Boy, I wish I had a mentor to help me, but I will help you as much as I can. But but sometimes you don't always get that opportunity, and but it's interesting, those life lessons. I'm like, man, should I be hard on these guys, or should I handle it with grace like Coach handled it with grace, or should I be aggressive like my dad was when he needed to be? Yeah, I think I should be aggressive this time.
Yeah, but also understanding that other people need different forms of
correct,
constructive criticism or
exactly.
like pushing them. So that's a balance. I'm sure it's tough for you being able to mentor different people with different backgrounds and different situations. So I'm sure that's really tough for.
Yeah, and that's something. And that's one of the skills that the being in the service and being in the sports has taught me. It's just like, and that's one of the words of advice that my coach gave me was, back in the day when I was a junior Marine, he said, hey, sometimes you just got to know your audience. Because I was talking to him about something that I remember like it was yesterday. The coach, we had just won our game. We had just lost barely. It was senior night. And, the politics of football, people want their kids to play. And I split time as a starter, to be honest, so I didn't play every single game either. But I remember like certain parents coming up to the coach and being like, and scowling at him and being like, "You're the worst coach I've ever met. I'm so sad like that my son played with you." And like I know who the player is because I know his parents, and I'm just like, wow. And they're just like, "You're a disgrace," pretty much. And the coach is just like, "All right, thank you very much. You know, have a good night." And it's just like, holy cow, man! Like,
coaches get racked.
Yes, so and that's the other thing that you don't see because not everybody, you know. And I believe this. Like, I believe this too. You know, growing up, it's just like, especially nowadays, like with the accountability part, it's just like, you know, pleasing everyone, trying to please everybody is like the key to failure. It just is. You know, especially in our line of work, you got to set the standard, man. You know, you got to set the standard, and like if people don't operate to that standard, they're like, "Hey, sorry, like I guess you didn't cut it." But if you try to go, yeah, if you try to please everybody, oh yeah, they get a piece too, even though they didn't work as hard. Kind of like what you were saying, everybody gets a trophy. Nah, if you stick by your guns and you set the standard, people will be better for it because they're held accountable. Hey, did you do this?
Right.
And I did run track when I was younger, and something happened to my body. I slowed down. I was like setting records at like as like a younger kid, and then like now I wear like size 13 shoe. I'm just like, I guess I have rabbit feet. I should be faster, but I'm slower. But that's just like me trying to go to a track meet and be like, yeah, I'm gonna run in the 440, and the coach is like, nah, you ain't got it, man. And I'm just like, wait, why not, bro? Come on, man, I wanted to run my whole life. I used to set records when I was in junior high. Well, that's irrelevant because you got rabbit feet and you're slow now. You're not gonna make the team. And I'm gonna be like, all right, I will do. If I was, I don't even have to try out. Watching these guys just blow past and setting records, I'm like, yeah, you're right, dude. I'm gonna self-evaluate on this one. You were absolutely right, coach. Like, it's some things aren't for everybody, and you just can't push. You know, like some of those people saying that to the coach is like, dude, their kids were barely, you know, not trying that hard at practice. Like, their character wasn't there up to par, you know, like they weren't doing the little things that other players were doing. And some people just believe that, you know, they should have certain things. But in life, if you learn that lesson younger, you know, even through sports, you know, hey, man, you shouldn't be on the field if you don't wait to be on the field, you know? If you deserve to be on the field,
you lose all the time in sports, and that's why it's important to like the repetitions, like you said, like the repetitions. More repetitions you get at winning and losing, the better you're gonna handle it in the future. Exactly.
Repetitions, man, and that's literally what separates the pros from the Joes. It's repetition. Even in my line of work, man, repetitions of the basics. You know, looking into other societies, because I'm like Americans are super, you know, the first ones like a lot in our culture. Because I relate American culture to the culture in sports because it's kind of one and the same. You go to these different countries, their cultures are completely different when it comes to sports, and it's funny to hear. It's a double-edged sword. And I won't try not to go down this rabbit hole too long, but like fans, right? Sports fans. You have diehard sports fans in America, man. I mean, people who know stats on like every player and this and that, and they can break down everything, even the analysts. I'm like, man, you guys need to work in this country's financial realm because we would be solid. Right. But
if you memorize everything you do.
Yeah, but the some of those people who are just like so analytical on these players and how good they are and they're in love with these players, man, they cannot play the sport to save their life. Save their life, man. And you're just like, man, at least he appreciates the fact that he could do this, he can dunk, and that's what makes the fans and like part of the culture so cool is because it's like you have the people that are cheering you on who cannot throw a football, but they love the quarterback. They cannot dunk the ball. They can't even shoot a free throw. But they're like, dude, LeBron, you know, Kobe Bryant, dude, is the man, dude. You know, I'm just like, man, these guys are sport. And they get them on the court, no skill. And then there's the double-edged sword. The people who are the exact same way. You get them on the court, no skill. But then they're just like, man, how can you drop that football? Man, how can you miss that? How can you miss that? And you're just like, man, do you understand the level that these pros are playing at? The amount of repetition that went into that even the throw, even the quarterback, like, dude, he overthrew it by a foot, but he had two dudes in his face, and he was throwing off of his back heel. Like, you're not looking at the let's break down the fundamentals of like why the play was bad, right?
Yeah.
You have those people who don't like look at, don't empathize and put themselves in that situation because they haven't played, and you're just like, man, these guys are playing.
By him like that? But
Yeah.
you see that sweep move he just did? Like,
Yeah, it's just like,
arm out of
the amount of repetition that guy is, and that's something that we do that has transferred over to in my life in the military. And in my job, sometimes we miss out on that, but a lot of the times we don't. And that's what some guys say, in my profession is like, that's what keeps, separates us from, I guess, the guys who aren't so good is like, we're good at the basics, the repetition. And looking at different societies from like back in the day, you definitely can see it. Like for example, I'll refer to the Japanese, the Bushido, the samurai. Those guys believed in repetition. Learn your art every day. That is the ethos in them, And it's just like, man, there's other cultures that they still continue that, and we do too with our sports and with other things, Imagine like a horse rider riding a horse and doing the same jump, or every day for 2 hours, just the one jump every day. He's gonna master that eventually. Tiger Woods. Looking at his videos from when he was a little boy, from when his dad was just like, Tiger, have fun, go play. His dad understood how important repetitions were. Because when I watched Tiger swing and swing and swing and swing, I'm like, how many times has he done this? And watching the videos as him as a young guy, developing into a young teenager, and then him being pro, it's like, man, there's no way he wasn't going to make it. The amount of repetitions
that similar swing all the way up, it just got
almost it just got more defined, little tweaking,
all the way up. Yeah.
To get to where you are, and I joke all the time. I'm like, man, yeah, I'll go try and walk on, and try to play football because I miss being in the huddle, to be honest, and I do, and I'm like, I miss looking up at the guys and tasting a little blood in my mouth a little bit from getting reamed, and I'm like, kind of still holding on because when I played semi-pro, it was like the spark like reignited in me, and I'm just like, I gotta play. I'm back in the game, baby. And it's just like, man, but the reality for me now is like I'm out of practice. That the last time I threw a football was probably last year, and so it's like I knew what it took in high school. I knew what it took in college. I know what it takes now, and there's somebody right now practicing in their backyard as we're talking, throwing a football through a tire like I was. I did that every day, and was my dream to start as a Fallbrook High School quarterback, and that's how small my world was. And but it was repetition. There's a boxer shadow boxing right now, running his legs off to get the cardio up as we speak. And there's somebody always prepping, I got no mic from you guys, sorry.
Oh, there we go. Oh. But yeah, it is crazy how that works though. Repetition, I mean, it's good for everything. I mean, as long as you're doing the right repetitions and not forming bad habits.
Exactly, and that's where the mentorship comes in, right? Like, exactly. when I'm teaching people how to shoot, they're like, "Oh, dude, I've shot, so many times with my peepaw or whatever," and I'm just like, "Yeah, dude, cool." And I'm like, "Ooh." That's why I'm just like, yeah. And the people that I love to see are the brand new shooters. I've never shot. I'm just like, cool, blank canvas, no bad habits. It takes 10 times more work to develop a shooter who has been shooting for years poorly than it does to transition a new shooter into a decent shooter, because they have no bad habits. And you're just like, oh, man. And that's where the repetition, like you're saying,
anything weird,
Yep, and that's where their mentorship comes in. It's like, man, he had a bad mentor letting him shoot like that. Or what was his dad thinking? But
yeah, who held this guy shoot?
Who held this guy accountable?
Yeah. Oh man. Well, hey, I think we are getting close to the end here, man. That went by pretty fast.
Oh wow,
Barry,
okay.
man, We do. We appreciate you coming on the show and talking to you, and I hope we can have you back. And I'm sure we got a lot more stuff to talk about.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I appreciate you too, and Culture and Sports, in its entirety, having me on. And I think what you guys are doing is important because you guys are peeling back the layers of things, and that's why I believe cultures and sports exist, so we can highlight the things that are important. Like you guys hit on earlier, the foundation. Like, where does it start? And it's super relevant to society. Like, we
and
need
just
this.
bettering your life in general,
Yeah.
just bettering yourself.
Yeah, we need this. So thank you guys, man. This is super important because, I mean, it literally starts at the youth, and if the youth can hear this and see this, that's super important.
Yeah, man, that's the plan. That's what we plan on doing.
Absolutely.
Taking this as far as we can, just informing people how important, sports is at a very young age or whenever you get into it, but
Sports, mentorship, it's all important, man. It's all
Yeah.
before we do get off, kind of tell us what you're doing right now and you got anything going on?
Yeah, man. I'm kind of like I guess I would say a jack of all trades at this point. Right now, I'm doing a house renovation, at my old house that I grew up in. It was just time, man. Time caught up with the old house. So, brought it to the studs. Gonna rejuvenate it, and the goal is to have my folks live like king and queen till that's it to the end of their days. So that's that. But for myself, I'll be moving out. I'm always out and about, with my job being in the military. So I'll be moving once again, and I'll be taking on a new adventure, living in my van. So I will be starting a vlog for that channel, and I will be using this van company, Outpost Vans in Oceanside. They're good friends of mine. Trying to put them out there as far as getting big in the van industry. They're very attention to detail, good dudes. They're allowing me to step in their shoes and use all of my fundamentals of leadership and no, I'm just kidding, and other things that I learned in life, and put those skills forward into helping me in my next journey to live and travel the country. So.
Well, we definitely want to see it. So when you come up with the channel, let us know.
Yeah, he said vlog. I didn't even know you knew what a vlog was.
I did. I learned that. I had to Google that word right before I got on. I was like, oh yeah. I think I'm using the right term, but just coach me up and mentor me.
I think you're right.
I think you got it.
Should be good.
Cool.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We'll definitely be have you on again, and we'll do this again. We'll get some more topics on here with you. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Thank you guys. God bless, man. Keep up the good work.
Talking to you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please leave a review. If you'd like further information on a daily basis, visit our website, cultureandsports.com, and join our email list. Also, feel free to follow us at Culture and Sports on social media. We'll see you all next week on another episode of Culture and Sports.